All right, I see Kate, I see Nick, I see Victor, I see Sade. Good evening.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, everybody.
How is everybody?
Good.
Good. How are you?
Doing okay, having some bandwidth issues, so off camera at the moment while I try and sort this out.
All right. I will be back in less than 2 minutes.
Okie doke.
Hi, everyone.
Hey, Danielle. Danielle, did you want me to bring up the document from last month's meeting? Would that be helpful in sort of guiding this discussion? I don't know.
Yeah, sure. I think we're just going to be continuing the discussion, but
Okay.
yeah, it will be helpful.
Just so we have it handy. Yep.
Yeah, thanks.
Hope everyone got to spend some time outdoors today. It was beautiful.
Clean the garage.
That's outdoors-ish.
Yes.
Yeah.
I found boxes I hadn't seen in 18 years when I moved in.
Oh, wow. Did you unearth anything good?
Yeah, I found my old records.
Neat.
Yeah, the ones I've been looking for.
That's awesome.
I'm back. It's just much easier to hear everybody with my AirPods because I got kids in the background. I hope everybody's doing okay with the allergies this weekend.
Sore throat action, I think that's allergies.
Yeah.
I think it is. I was just saying, I think they knows I'm an invasive species since I've only been out here for 2.5 years or whatever, and I can sense my Californianness push me away. I've never had allergies really my whole life until I came out here, which makes sense.
The Northeast allergies will get you.
I'm sorry, Nick, did you just call yourself an invasive species?
Yes, yes, I do.
I thought perhaps I had misheard you.
When I was talking about allergies last year, I think my boss said I was an invasive species because of that. So pretty good.
Wow, that's cold.
You know, it's all right. I got thick skin, but it got deep for sure.
All right. I know Katie was hoping to join. I don't see her here yet, but perhaps we want to get started.
Yes, I will keep an eye out just in case she's trying to message me on one of the many social accounts that I have. In case she's trying to get in, I'll keep an eye out for it. All right. But in that case, yes, we can I think starting would be good. Is that everybody? I think Dana said she was going to come as well.
Yes, Dana also said that she would be here. I will ping her quickly. I'm sure she's on her way.
Yeah. All right. I'm just pulling up the documents for the tree ordinance. I didn't get a chance to send it out. Oh, we should officially start the meeting. So this is the Environmental Advisory Council meeting for May 7th, 2014. I am Kate Schlott, the chairperson for the EAC, and we can go around and just verify everybody's attendance.
Nick Tedrow, present.
Victor Vividu.
And it's you, Sade.
Sorry, is my mic working?
Yes.
Okay. Sade Takuru.
Okay.
And I just saw Katie join and then disappear. So she might also be having some technical issues, but hopefully she'll be shortly behind us.
Okay, great. Great. Hi, Danielle. How are you tonight?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Since we last met in relation to the tree ordinance, actually, Dana and I had an opportunity to take a short drive around Ossining and start preparing a significant tree list. I do need to share that with the rest of the committee at this point, but we started putting down a few trees that we can potentially add to that. And we're coming up, I know Nick had briefly asked me about it, but we're coming up with a methodology for how we're going to go about finishing out that list, and something that we could prepare in the next month or two to go over and maybe open up to the public and see what their contributions could be, or if they have any recommendations for a significant tree to be added as well.
Nice. Sounds good.
I apologize for being late. I could not log in with my village email, so I could hear you, but I couldn't see you. And I could hear you, but you couldn't see me. So I re-logged in with my personal email.
Well,
We're
welcome,
happy to
Katie.
see and hear you.
Thank you.
Okay, so on the agenda tonight, we have continuing discussions of revisions to the tree ordinance, and then following that up with conversation about the significant tree list, which is connected to the tree ordinance as well. And then we don't have any new business of the board or additional business to discuss at this time. We do have more information on the natural resource inventory, but I'm going to save that for the June meeting when I have a more thorough proposal to put together. I know that Nick had, thank you, Nick, for sending out the responses to the tree questionnaire that Danielle had sent us a while back. I didn't have anything to add to that. I actually think, Nick, you did a great job summarizing a lot of what we had discussed during the meeting and just giving a quick written response to everything that we had discussed. So I don't know, were there additional things that we wanted to focus on in particular for the tree ordinance?
Can I just
I
quickly pipe in and suggest, I'm sorry. So I
Yeah.
know that Katie was not able to join us last time and Victor wasn't either. If maybe you, Chair, or if Danielle wanted to do just a quick synopsis of what brought us here, and then I'm sorry, Nick, I think I stepped on you a little bit.
No, you're good. I was just gonna say, I'm looking back at that, and I don't think Danielle was even on the email I had sent with
Oh,
the responses.
I got it. Don't worry.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, I don't know how profound any of my thoughts were, but it's fine.
right. So I guess for Katie, to bring you up to speed, I don't know if you saw the stuff from last month, but we were going over the tree ordinance to update things that we've had there. And this, actually, we've had this conversation a few times, I think in the
Yes.
last year and a half, 2 years. So things are finally, stuff that we have talked about are being incorporated into the ordinance now. So now we're discussing what that means, what that looks like, what we would want to see, how we want to deal with particular permitting issues. I think, did we ever decide on the conversation about a tree bank? I wasn't sure if that was.
I don't think we reached the point of coming up with a definitive answer. I think we agreed it was an excellent idea, but how that would work, we haven't worked out the details. That's what I remember.
Oh, here comes Dana.
I read this before and I'm quickly looking at it again.
Sorry, I always forget this one starts at 7. I'm just used to 7:30. Sorry.
All right. So as part of the continuing conversation of the tree ordinance, Danielle, was there something in particular within the questions that you wanted to focus on or get more details about, or are there things in particular that you would like us to elaborate on in the recommendations?
Nothing really in particular. I recommended we put this back on the agenda just to continue the discussion for those who weren't here last month or who didn't get a chance to read those questions. And if you guys had any questions for me, I can answer those because we are in the process of drafting up some wording to get to you guys to read before the June meeting. And then for the June meeting, we'll go through what we drafted and discuss and if you guys have any edits or things like that, we can refine it at the next meeting. But this is more just to see if you guys had any questions or wanted to talk about something specific. More than happy to. So
So you're gonna draft up language for the significant trees? thing is
yes,
what you're talking about?
yeah, sure.
Okay, great. Yeah, I was looking at, lots of places have a significant tree registry, but they all seem to have I don't know if there's any standardized criteria. And I didn't know whether our town village arborist had any experience with significant tree lists. I'm not sure who that person is, but anyway, so yeah, I think it's great to just come up with some language and start, refining that and then, kind of get it out there, right?
Mhm.
Yes, and the standards, the criteria for the significant trees can be determined by you guys. There's no real standard. It's very loose. So it's whatever you guys want. If that's something you want to
Alright.
discuss tonight, we can discuss that.
I think that could be a good thing to include. At one point Dana was telling me you were saying that the San Francisco significant tree list, that they had defined a significant tree as any tree that was like cool.
Extra special.
Extra special, that's what it was.
That's pretty broad.
Yep.
It's extremely. But I was actually, we had tossed around a couple of ideas over the last few months, but also when Dana and I were going around looking at trees recently, how to define what makes a significant tree for us. And I think it's important that, especially when we open this up to the public, that we have specific wording that they can go by. So definitely, something that has a historic, cultural, or ecological value to the village. And that can be, cross-referenced with things like the type of tree that it is. We do have some older trees that we might not have as many species left of those particular trees. So that could be something that's important to preserve. Also looking at age, height, diameter at breast width. I know that we were saying that, the bigger trees and that will help us figure out age, the location and, the significance. So I think that these are things that as we are defining what it means, that we should have explicitly stated, so that as we're opening this up, that there's, agreement across the board, whether it be private, public, government that's looking at this, that they can understand what would define a significant tree.
And hopping back to the tree ordinance, I had read through Nick's comments before, and I'm quickly scanning them again. And I do apologize for totally spacing out last month. Would it be okay if I asked for clarification, not on Nick's, but on the ordinance, or the underlying? And this is just, I need to understand. Under 6, I guess it's Article 6, new section, issuance of tree removal permits with conditions. Let's see. Oh, item V. In
Okay.
connection with all subdivision and site plan applications, the project shall meet the minimum requirement of the replacement of 50% of the total aggregate diameter of trees proposed for removal with new trees in accordance with the plan for tree replacement. So that means, in other words, if they're taking out, say, 200 inches of aggregate diameter, they have to replace at least 100. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's correct. And
So
that's
if
just
they're
a
taking-
recommendation. We can change that too if you guys like, but yes.
Okay. And has that worked in other places?
Yes, so most of these recommendations that I provided in those questions are based off of Dobbs Ferry and the town of Ossining, their tree
Okay.
ordinance. So, it's pretty standard in the area to do that.
And this makes sense. We often wouldn't want to lose any of the aggregate diameter of trees, but given the cost of replacing a 60-inch tree with another 60-inch tree. That's just not gonna happen.
Right.
Okay, thanks.
And if I can interject just a little bit, that was where, I can speak from the village's perspective a little bit here, where the tree bank fund sort of came about. Because, as we know, we all live here, some of the lots within, certain neighborhoods of the village are quite small. So if you, were to tell somebody, okay, you're taking down, a couple of trees because you're looking to, I don't know, install a patio, or you're putting in a playground. They may say, I don't, my yard is already pretty tight as it is. I am happy to replant a tree. I just don't know if I can fit one on my property. And so that was, something that we also had thought the tree bank fund would be helpful in offering folks an option, that if for whatever reason they don't feel like they can accommodate that replanting on their parcel, they could make a deposit into that tree bank fund, which I think, Danielle, the town also makes available, correct?
Yeah, I
And
think
then
so.
the municipality at their discretion would be able to plant a suitable species of tree. And of course, we would try to do it, in approximate area to that specific piece of property, as opposed to completely on the other side of the village.
That makes sense to me, a lot of sense. Thank you.
I'm not sure where that sound is coming from. It must be background noise from someone.
It
Um,
it could be me. Let me
Okay.
mute myself because I'm near.
So what happens if we don't have like a spot near the property that we can plant? I guess that's like a follow-up question I'm thinking about now, like in terms of the tree bank. What if we don't find an adequate location to plant a tree? How does that work?
That's a great
Does that
I mean-
do anything? I
Yeah,
mean, is that
mean, I
something that
think-
we?
Yeah, I'm not sure how it's handled in other places. Danielle might be able to say a little bit more. My feeling is this, as opposed to letting the perfect be the enemy of the good. I
Mm.
think, planting things within the village right of way is something we can always do. And there's a village right of way that abuts, practically every single property in the village in some way or another. If it was impossible to get it in that neighborhood, which I would find hard to believe, a couple blocks away, wouldn't be a terrible thing. I think we would, and look, I don't know how often people are going to avail themselves of this. It'll be impossible to know until we try it.
Mhm.
I have to imagine that most people would feel that they'd be able to accommodate it on their own property. This is just for the handful of folks who, without a tree bank fund, we'd basically just be cutting down trees without any replacement whatsoever. And those folks would just, not be replanting any trees anywhere. So Danielle, I don't know if you, from a practical perspective, can speak about how it's worked in other communities, if it's come up.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't come up, like you said, too often because it's pretty hard to find an impossible place to plant a tree. But typically, if it's not on like an abutting property, then it is in the right of way of the town or village. And if that's not possible, which I think we've run into a very small handful of times, then they would then go to place of public recreation or a public park and plant it there. So that's something we can also
Okay.
add.
Yeah, I was thinking maybe that in the very rare occasion something like this happens, that maybe it is a good idea just to have something alluding to that in the ordinance, just as like, to be safe on our
Yeah,
end, so that we could
for
just
sure.
show that we have at least some sort of a plan that's in place. Yeah, I don't, like you're saying, like I don't really foresee that being a big issue, but like what if, like, for some reason that does become an issue and it becomes this back and forth, we'll at least have something within the code that gives us some sort of a framework to go by.
I think that's an excellent point. I think it should absolutely be in there. You're right.
Trying to think, is there anything, I didn't have any particular questions on my end.
I will share also, while we're thinking about if there's any last minute questions, the village contracts with a professional licensed arborist to do work, which in most cases, 90% of the time is when someone puts in a tree removal application. The arborist goes out and takes a look at the site, takes a look at the tree. But then, there are other instances where if we have a municipal tree that we're concerned, something in a park that Danielle was just describing, that we need to see if it needs, very serious trimming or if it needs to be removed. And then sometimes, though rarely, the arborist is asked to opine on site plan applications, if it, contemplates a much larger site, a much larger, removal of trees and then, subsequent replanting. If the EAC, comes up with something that they would like for Jean to look at, I'm sure that she'd be very happy to do so. Jean, lives relatively locally. She lives, elsewhere in the county, but she's in Ossining pretty frequently. This is her passion. This is something that she really loves to do. So I'm sure that she would be very happy to offer as much or a little advice as the board is looking for. So just don't forget that you have her as an asset here for when you're ready.
Yeah, I think actually she would be great to talk to about, helping to define what a significant tree in our area would look like. Maybe not necessarily, picking them out individually, but, giving us a heads up on like what kind of species we should keep an eye out for. Like if there's a minimum age species connection that we should consider as we're going around, that might be important that we could potentially be overlooking. It's just a thought. I'm not sure if like we're at a stage where that's necessary yet. But having that level of expertise as we're going through finishing the ordinance and doing a significant tree list, I think would be really good to include. So I think at some point, at least once having a conversation with her, I think would be a good idea.
I
Especially
think that
since,
sounds wonderful. Yep.
I'd like to know which species of trees are somewhat indigenous here so that, because I think those are the ones we're really losing, are these old species. And examples of those, whether it's a horse chestnut or a certain type of magnolia or something, I don't know, but trees that have been here a really long time and weren't just introduced here, and I don't know enough about trees to know, but dogwoods, I don't know how old, we have a lot of old dogwoods, but
Birches, maples. There's a list. Birches and maples. I mean, the county, I perused the county site a little bit just to get some of their resources. And they have links to other organizations and places, authorities that, speak to the native plants. And then, beyond that, it's like, well, I don't know, maybe not every native species is significant per se, but
Right.
is it, if they are one that attracts hummingbirds and butterflies and squirrels or something and helps maintain a population, perhaps those are a higher level of native species that should retain a better, more significant status than, okay, maybe just like a maple tree of some sort just looks really nice and is aesthetically pretty, but not necessarily more significant beyond the aesthetic. So I don't know if that's a route we want to take to think about this, but
Yeah. And I think that could be a great connection to the ecological importance of particular species as we're defining this and going about this. I think that would be great, a great connection between that.
And something else that I've learned from our arborist, is that just because if I have a 1/4 acre property, and I need to replant a tree, just because that's a native species tree doesn't mean it's necessarily viable on my property, right? I mean, we have all, our neighbors have trees that might be, offering, shade that makes it, not viable. Our soil may be too dry, maybe too moist, maybe too rocky. So having her expertise, we're asking her, as part of this process and potentially a much later part, to help us develop sort of an annually updated list of, recommended trees for Ossining, specifically for replanting, for small, medium, and large trees, as well as for, different, soil conditions. So basically having like a 3x3 matrix, that, if you're found to have this kind of condition and you need a small tree, here's the list that we're going to ask you to choose from.
That's a great idea, because you couldn't ask the
Mhm.
arborist to come in and look at every property. But if you tell us, here's a menu of what people can choose from, of what's appropriate in different situations. That's a great idea.
Yep, and also by updating it regularly, you sort of get rid of the risk of if, for example, everyone is picking, species A because it's relatively affordable, it's in,
Yeah.
high supply, and now all of a sudden we're
Right.
seeing that, the species diversity has plummeted because everybody's planting this one kind of tree. She can sort of, tweak that list, and, now that's perhaps no longer an option.
Is that something we want to put in the ordinance? Because I know that like I forget what the equation is when it comes to this like species versus genus versus, there's a particular calculation that they use when they talk about how many of a particular tree species to plant in a given geography. So I mean, I don't know if that would be more of a hindrance at this point, and it might not even be at that level where we need to be concerned about that. But like, do we want to consider whether, if we hit like a certain percentage of one type within the village that we know were planted within a given amount of time, that we would recommend a different one? Like, I don't know if that's appropriate at this point, but I know that there are those different calculations that arborists use when it comes to planting new species within large areas in the attempts of preventing monoculture from happening, so that when there is, issues with climate change or drought, too much rain or species infestation, that it's not killing everything all at once.
I'm wondering if maybe, and from the standpoint of drafting the ordinance, that rather than put a specific list in the ordinance, that the ordinance refers the applicant to a list that's maintained by the arborist, that's available at whatever department handles this. And that
Okay,
way it can
yeah.
be updated without having to go through the loop.
Yeah.
It'd be pretty amazing though, if we were to just be able to disrupt the ecological patterns, just through the trees being replaced in. Awesome.
So I think, I mean, I'll just do a quick check-in here. Danielle, Chair, what do you think would be a helpful next step? Do you think we're ready to, have Danielle and her team put something together for the village board to look at, just so that, we've gotten a foothold? Or do we think another meeting and perhaps a meeting with the arborist would be helpful before we do that, so that we can kind of, take it all in one piece here?
I think one more meeting, at least so that we can discuss it with the arborist before we go in front of the board. Because I think by the time we get to the board, it would be nice to have something that's closer to being ready. Where we feel more comfortable as saying that this is pretty close to a final document than going back, presenting and then finding something and going back after. So I personally think one more meeting and discussion with the arborist would be great. And then presenting it to the board possibly after the June meeting sometime, whether it be a couple weeks after or the month after, would be good.
Yeah, I think I think it should be pretty refined by the time it comes to us, because you really don't want us giving too much input. I'm just kidding. We'd like, I think that makes sense.
You like to get it baked rather than the ingredients.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Want it well baked.
And that also gives us time to really refine what we're defining as a significant tree, because that's also a big part of the ordinance and part of what our responsibilities are in terms of maintaining a list like that. That gives us time to finalize things and have something ready to present as a next step within this, with this as well.
Yeah, I agree. And I think based on our discussion from last month and this month, that I at least have enough from you guys, unless anybody wanted to provide more input, that I feel confident that we can get some kind of draft wording by the June meeting, and then we can sit down and look at it at that meeting, and then maybe present that to the arborist as well as the significant tree criteria, just to see what she thinks, and then we can refine from there.
Yeah, I feel comfortable with that. How does everybody else do, or what are your opinions on this? If anyone else has any, or?
Sounds good to me.
I don't know if we're wrapping up on the whole topic altogether, just the significant tree part.
I think that they're both connected. So I don't know if necessarily if we're wrapping up on it as much as like still tossing around some ideas, but moving toward giving more definitive answers, I think, towards the changes that we're looking at.
Yeah, I
and I
think
can
when
forward.
you come
Oh,
to the board, you're gonna have to, you're gonna want to have a really good idea of what a significant tree is and what are the parameters and all that stuff. That's the stuff they're gonna want to see.
yeah. And I know there will be a lot of questions of like, why is this important? What are we going to do with this? And I think having something that's well put together by then would be great to answer those questions and not leave any possibility of gaps or confusion.
Right.
And I started writing up a brief description or discussion based on, when we were doing the drive Dana, of how we could start defining stuff. So I could forward that around to everybody with the spreadsheet as well. I only have like 5 trees on it right now. It's not even have 4 trees, excuse me. Yeah, and then we can, add as needed based on the criteria that we're coming up with. So I'll send this out to everyone tonight. I did start making a list of type of tree, and then it's, the spreadsheet has, approximate age, height and feet, diameter, breast width, the location, and then we can fill in and answer specifically what makes this tree significant, because I think that's going to be an important question that comes up in front of the board as well, because by designating a significant tree list through the ordinance, we're kind of making property owners, whether they be public or private, go through these extra hoops to get permits when it comes to trimming the tree or removing the tree. So I think it's going to be really important for us to also have all of that accounted for before we go to the board, so that they understand why we're choosing the trees that we're selecting, and what the importance of them would be in terms of the village as a whole. And that helps us fill in some of the gaps for the natural resource inventory, because the tree list is very much connected to our natural resources. And that would be a great, I think, way of piggybacking these two projects or these two types of things together when it comes to the environmental issues that we're concerned about within the village.
All right.
And Chair, I know this is something that you and I have spoken about a lot, but I'm not sure if it's gotten discussed as much on these meetings. The village's tree equity score. We're hoping to really, speaking of footholds, be able to make some impact here. I could
Yes.
share the screen really quickly and just show where we're at. This is
We have not
something that-
discussed the tree equity score in a while, but yes.
Yeah, this is something that came up when we were doing the grant back in 2020, 2021. Nelson Park and Nelson Sitting Park, for those who were maybe not around then, were, at one time a lot more forested than they are today, for a variety of reasons. Some of them were, tree species that had diseases. Some of them were just taken down by storms. But if you look at both of those parks right now, you see a lot of, very, very small trees that are making their way. So this was a grant that we got back in 2019, I believe, to do this project, where 80 native species trees were planted between the two parks. And most of those trees have done well and survived. We work closely with our regional forester. His name is George Profis. We're one of his very favorite communities. He loves visiting. He's due for a visit here soon if anyone wants to meet him and join me. But that's when the chair and I really started learning more, or when I started learning, when she started teaching me about the tree equity score. So you can see here in Ossining, if everyone can see on my screen, it's broken up by census block. And so you can see some areas of Ossining are doing real well. Obviously 100 is the top score. But we definitely have some ways to go here, specifically in the one that's directly like our main street and coming down to the waterfront. Obviously our downtown is pretty built out, so there's only so much that we can do from there. But there's also a lot of parkland contained within this area. So when we talk about you know, if we do a tree bank and someone's not able to accommodate it on their property where that tree might go, this might be a useful guide in sort of helping us to better understand where we can spread the wealth a little bit.
And you just reminded me that, you know, looking at this map, I believe actually it was Erica who had originally told us about the tree equity score. And then when we started looking at it and really getting like an idea of what it was telling us, like it really opened our eyes to the possibilities. You know, the fact that Ossining, at least the village or significant portions of the village, are considered to be part of environmental justice communities by the Department of Environmental Conservation.
Right.
I think, you know, this link between, you know, the tree equity score and environmental justice issues could be a really important one too. And like this would help, I think, you know, in understanding these issues, start to help us like point us in a direction of how to mitigate some of these problems.
Is Ossining a climate smart community?
Ossining is, we are not bronze or silver, but we are whatever the base level certification is. I think it's just certified or
Yeah,
registered.
gotcha.
Yeah, I think
Um,
we're recognized, but we're not,
Exactly.
yeah, as Maddie's saying,
Yeah.
like we're not.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Huh.
this actually might help us because, you know, thinking about the stuff that we were doing with the CAPI project, and other climate adaptive initiatives that are going on, this actually could help us achieve some of that, a higher status with climate smart community. You know, I don't know if it'll get us to, I forget, what is it, silver is like the highest or something.
It's
But
the
it'll at
highest right
least,
now.
what was that?
It's the highest right now. I think they're gonna try and make
Okay.
a goal at some point, right?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think this would be a great way also, you know, dealing with the tree ordinance, getting a significant tree list, doing things that, you know, could help us figure out a tree bank, how we could plant trees in other places if we can't do it on someone's property. Could help us also meet some of that point requirement for the climate smart communities to get a higher recognition within that standing, whether it be bronze, or silver. I think right now, you know, we'll aim for bronze.
It's not a small undertaking to get that out. I'm sure Maddie's looked into it.
Yeah, I will say the town, we were working with the town of Ossining to try to do it collectively back in 2021, I want to say. And now that the town has really left us in the dust. Under Town Supervisor Feldman, they really have you know, gotten a lot of past actions documented. They're moving and shaking up there. So I know that the supervisor and her team have been more than generous with those resources to help us do the same. It's just a matter of time as so many things are. So I'm sure that we'll get caught up very soon. But I completely agree. I think this is really gonna help us to, you know, have yet another feather in our cap when we go for that certification.
Not to make this a tangent, but I did the Land Use Leadership Alliance training program at Pace Law this last month, and one of the speakers was, you know, someone from HVRC talking about, and some of the other municipalities talking about the climate smart communities and, you know, strategies and resources for helping get municipalities the resources to get the documentation done. So if we're interested in carrying that conversation forward, I'm happy to, you know, reach out to the contacts I was given and the resources that were provided through that to see if it's useful for us.
Yeah, I think that's great. I mean, I think that in combination, like I've been doing the Hudson River Watershed Alliance breakfast webinars too, and like they've had a lot of great information on how to achieve certain climate smart community recognition, as well as like there's an upcoming one this Thursday that's talking about municipalities in combination with academic institutions and making those kind of partnerships work. You know, that could help us achieve some of that point value as well. So I think that would be a great conversation, I think, to keep going as we're pushing these forward. And you know, and actually having an NRI helps to add points to that too.
That's a big one, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, and by the way, Maddie, speaking of which, in connection to this and to the tree ordinance, at the CAPI meeting last week, the Village of Irvington, because a lot of these grants are multi-municipality grants. The Village of Irvington did express interest in possibly collaborating on NRI projects as well, which would help get grant opportunities as they come up. So there are lots of avenues that we can explore when it comes to climate smart community points, and these are just multiple ways that we can achieve them.
Yeah, sorry, I'm nodding vigorously and then I just realized no. one-
Okay.
So that's
Okay.
what's happening on this side.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much like that. I don't have any other questions. I think so far, like what we've discussed and everything that, Danielle and Maddie and everybody else has brought up, I think are great things to build on. And then, once we review it for June, I think that would be actually a really good, we can give it one more review, talk to the arborist, and then have some time to present it. I'll go present it to the board when we're ready,
Sounds good.
unless someone else wants to do it. I'm always happy to do it, so.
So Chair, I just want to make sure I'm clear. So are we anticipating having the arborist look at it before the June meeting and having provided that feedback in advance of that? Do we want her to join at the June meeting and see it for the first time shortly before? At what point would you want to engage her? in
In
this?
advance, she should be part of it, I think.
Yeah, I think maybe if she can come to the June meeting, I think that would be great.
Okay.
Yeah, like give her some time to look it over before she comes, absolutely. But I think if we can actually have her here at the meeting and we can discuss it with her directly at the meeting, I think it'd be great.
All right, we will make it happen.
And I will contact I'm gonna contact Mike Rubbo in the environmental studies and science department at Pace, because he worked with a couple, I forget which one, it may have been Mount Kisco when they did their NRI. So he might be able to like at least give us a presentation on steps that we could take and how we can connect this to the tree ordinance and other resource plans that we have. Okay, yeah. Just making a note for myself. Does anyone else have any further questions for Danielle or comments?
I don't know, like, I'd be happy to talk about a couple of the questions I posed and the thing, but if that was of use to people or not. If
Yeah,
anyone-
good.
I was, just from the thing I sent out the other week, the clear cutting, I don't know if anybody had thoughts about that, about, I don't know if the definition is changing in the amendments or not. I was confused by the one that's currently on the books and how that's written. And
I was
what
planning on revising that a little bit so it's more clear because, yeah, like you said, it's a little ambiguous.
depending on the lot size, it's just like, that's a very subjective thing to have in a ordinance code. And then I don't know if people feel less or more inclined. I noticed Dobbs Ferry's limit is 5 trees, whereas we have 10 in ours. I don't know if it's worth reducing that number to be more strict about it or not, but I don't know what's common or not, but I just, in comparing the different things out there, noticed they had a lower threshold for that definition. That's,
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, that might be a good question for the arborist also.
I mean, we have such little, well, certainly in our more western parts of the village tree cover already.
Mhm.
The impact is obviously more significant for taking trees out here. So being more scrutinous maybe is good. I don't know.
I mean, I wouldn't personally be opposed to 5 over 10. yeah, but I don't know what the standard typically is, whether Dobbs Ferry is a standard or if they're kind of like an outlier in how they do it. I don't know.
Danielle, do you have any, is 5 very, very strict for the standard or?
I mean, I don't think so. We typically see 5 to 10. But considering that the village typically has smaller lot sizes than some other municipalities that we work with, I think 5 would be fine. But I think it's also something worth bringing up to the arborist because I'm not too confident on that number. I don't really know what is best. I just know what we see often, and that's 5 to 10. But like I said, the smaller lot sizes in Austining might make that number okay. So
Do we know why Dobbs Ferry made it 5 and not another number?
I am not sure.
I think we should, before we arbitrarily change, we should probably know why they chose that number.
I'm definitely up for more information on the matter. Yeah, it just stuck out to me as like, oh, 5 versus 10. Wonder why that is.
Yeah, I can definitely do some research on that because I'm also curious.
Yeah, and maybe it's something we should do based on lot size. You know, whether if it's a small lot of under a certain amount, and I know like making a hard boundary on a number can get complicated sometimes. But say if it's a lot under a certain amount, size wise, it's 5, and if it's a larger lot, it's 10. It's kind of like what we do with the leaf blower ordinance, where if it's under half acre, gotta be electric, and if it's a larger property, there's more leeway for other technologies to be used. Maybe that's something we can consider. Maybe trying to find like a nice compromise between the two, because we do have small lots, but we also have big ones, depending on where in the village you are.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and I think that just isn't maybe probably what was partially intended in this original writing, because they do say depending on lot size there, so they want to be reasonable with property owners and not overburden them or overburden them, but yeah, that makes sense. Seems like
Because like the last thing we want is somebody with a small lot who's only got like 7 trees cutting down, all of them. That would be not desirable.
And having the scale is useful, just like the significant tree list and all the other things, as much as you can make it very clear and scale, in a chart for people, that helps. I was talking to the Greenberg neighborhood plan or whatever, some of the things they did. I haven't looked at their ordinance after that discussion, but it seemed like they've regretted some of the things as making things too burdensome for property managers, and particularly things around notices. And I'm not exactly sure what they did or have on their requirements for notices, but that was maybe something I was curious to see if anyone had any further thoughts about, is the requirements for notices on things. Is it just a simple posting, or do you have to like send letters out to your neighbors or something, or anyone who's going to be visually or audibly affected by it? Does it have to go to a public filing? I don't know. I don't know if anyone had anything. I think the proposal here says just posting a sign. As we're still just good with that. Something I was curious about thinking about more.
Maybe have a certain number of days requirement to put the sign up before you do it. Not necessarily bring it in front of like a public hearing, because that does delay things. But at least give people enough of maybe a week. I don't know if that's too long, I really don't. But give people enough time to at least know that it's happening. Yeah. But I think these are also, yeah.
Sorry.
Mhm.
No,
Oh,
go
no,
ahead.
I was just gonna say that I think these are also great questions as like follow-up questions that we can ask the arborist and get like more detail and see what she sees, or like what she's come across in her professional opinion. I think that would be these are great follow-up questions for her too.
I was just gonna say that I also have in the document with the questions that we can have a statement saying that if the arborist or whoever reviewing the permit applications feels necessary to, that they can refer the application to the planning board, and then the planning board can then open up a public hearing for that application if necessary.
That was gonna be the last thing I brought up actually, was the flow of where the permit applications go, and is that gonna be mostly I have mostly the building department, maybe if it's a very spelled out process, and yeah, special cases or appeals to the planning department, is that typically how it would go?
Typically, yeah. And if it's something like a large area being clear cut or one of the significant trees, then that kind of permit application would be referred to the planning board and then go through public hearing.
Well, I will leave it there for me. Thank you for everything.
Does anyone else have any other questions or comments? No? Well, in that case, yeah, Danielle, I think this is great. And I think, for the June meeting, we'll have some time to look it over after you make whatever updates need to be made, and then we can discuss this and finalize stuff in the June meeting and get things closer to be ready for the board.
Sounds
And
good.
we could bring it to them shortly after, hopefully.
Great.
Okay. All right. Maddie, anything else you would like to add before Danielle goes?
I would just like to add that I'm so
Mhm.
thankful to Danielle for getting us started on this, and also to the EAC for taking this on and taking it so seriously. Trees are such a valuable gift that we often can take for granted. And I think it's a real testament to this board that you're showing an interest in making sure that they're protected. So thank you.
Thank you.
You.
Well, I don't have any other questions. So Danielle, if there's anything else, I'm definitely I'll reach out to you via email if there's anything we have to add. But I think Nick did a great job adding in a lot of the stuff
Yes.
that we had discussed last meeting. So that was really helpful. Thank you, Nick. Because I didn't get it out in time. You beat me to it. So that's great. So we'll see you for the June meeting. We'll definitely have you on the agenda for that.
Sounds good. And I'll try to have something to you guys either end of this week or early next week to review. So
Wonderful. All right.
Thank you.
Thanks. I don't have, other than the significant tree list, I didn't have anything else on the agenda. So before we go, is there anything else that anyone would like to bring up or discuss as a follow-up to things that we have discussed recently?
I just wanted to mention that as we move forward with the multimodal transportation hub,
Mm-hmm.
which is entering its design phase and public engagement phase, that we're going to be losing some trees on that site. And I think we should
Okay.
start thinking about where we're going to plant new ones. And it's not going
Okay.
to be able to plant them there. I know they're going to try and save as many trees as they can around the outside, but all those trees on the inside of that lot are going to go.
Okay.
So that's going to be, and which is sad. It's quite a few, I think, but I think we need to think of where we're going to put new ones to replace them. Like our tree bank thing.
Yeah. Okay.
Just a thought.
No, that is good. We'll keep that as keep that on our mind as things are moving forward. Is that going to come before? I'm assuming that will come before the EAC when we're finally.
I would think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so when that does come before us, that's something that we'll keep in mind, and we can think about like how we can contribute to the tree bank or where we can think about putting these things, putting new trees.
Right. Okay.
All right. Hey, Maddie? Wasn't sure if she's
Nothing
still
from
there.
me. I think we're
All right.
ready to wrap.
All right. So then in that case, we'll see everyone for the June meeting. And if there's anything I need to update, I will send it out to you. I will send out the significant tree list and the quick summary that I had written up with Dana over the last week. And start moving things forward with that.
Great.
All right.
Awesome.
So I guess so the meeting for the EEC May 7th, we are adjourned.
Bye, everybody.
Okay.
Thanks,
Thank you,
guys.
everybody.
Bye.
Good night.
Good night,
night.
everybody.
Have a good
Good
one.
night, everyone.
See you next month. Bye-bye.